Right, so I thought today what I would do is show you how to convert a green tea Scoby into a coffee Scoby, so that you can make delicious coffee kombucha. If you're already making kombucha, you will probably have an excess of Scobies. I mean, they do tend to grow pretty fast and they grow in layers, sort of one up on the other. So if you look, this is a classic sort of green tea Scoby. It's nice and smooth, it's lovely and sort of white looking, looks really nice and clean. It's quite an attractive looking thing, I think. So what you need to do with, if you've got a spare one and you want to change it into coffee, I'll show you what a coffee Scoby looks like, which is totally different. It does not look attractive at all, I have to say. If you come in a bit closer, you can see. So you can see that the coffee Scoby looks totally different. It's quite uneven, really is quite unattractive looking. It doesn't grow quite the same as a green tea Scoby, but that is absolutely perfectly fine and healthy. I'll put that back in, and that will grow other layers which you can use for coffee. This was my original one, which you can see is just totally different. That one's a wee bit smoother, but these subsequent ones have grown and they're quite sort of uneven and lumpy looking, so that's okay. So to recap, what you're going to do then, the next time you're making your green tea for your kombucha, what to do is take one of your green tea Scobies off, put it in a separate container, and what I would do is to start with just a litre, because you don't want to waste it. You're not going to be drinking the first batch anyway. So I would take 500 mils of your sweetened green tea, put that in your container with your Scoby, and then what I do is make up 500 mils of coffee and just make the coffee up the way that you like it. What I do with coffee kombucha is sweeten it with slightly less sugar. So your coffee, if you make up 500 mils, sweeten it with 25 grams of sugar, allow it to cool down, and then put the coffee in beside the tea, and then put your Scoby on top. Make sure it's cooled the way you would do with your normal kombucha. And in that first batch, just kind of gets your Scoby used to the fact there's some green tea there, there's also coffee, because coffee is obviously totally different to green tea. And sometimes if you just take a Scoby and you put it straight from one to another, it just doesn't do very well. It's too big a shock. It's like changing your dog from dog food to cat food or something, so you need to be a wee bit careful about it. These are living organisms and they have special, needs, that they have their own likes and whatever as well. So again, as I say, once you use your green tea Scoby, you convert it to coffee, you can't then put it back into green tea. So make sure you're using a spare to do this. So what I did again was my green tea Scoby, 500 mils of my sweetened tea, 500 mils of coffee, sweetened with 25 grams of sugar. Cool it down, put your Scoby on top, and you leave it. Coffee kombucha ferments faster than green tea, so generally speaking, in about 5 days, 4 or 5 days, should be fine. Now, I didn't drink the first batch because it tastes slightly weird because it's obviously a mixture of tea and coffee. So what I did was with that is I just took that off, and then what I did was the next batch just made it all coffee. I have a Gaggia bean to cup machine, so I use organic coffee. This is one of the brands that I use other coffees as well, but use a coffee that has like sort of sweet overtones like chocolate or caramelly or whatever. That makes the best sort of kombucha. So what you want, and I always use organic coffee, but just use whatever you would use normally, and make it to the strength that you would drink it. That's how and then to say I drink really strong coffee, so I make a really strong kombucha, which is delicious to me, but that's because I really like coffee. So once you've done that, also what I meant to say was you need to add 10% of starter tea to your first batch, because you obviously until your Scoby gets used to the coffee. Once you've made your first batch with a half green tea, half coffee, you add 100 mils of your strong starter tea, which is what you would do if you were making a batch of green tea kombucha. And then for subsequent batches, you don't need to hold back any. You just make it with the coffee, and then you just add your Scoby to the coffee, because coffee is acidic anyway. The reason that you add some of your starter tea is to acidify it and to prevent mould. If you're actually just making up your strong coffee, then the next batch you make, you can just add it straight in, you don't need to. Or what you can do for the second batch is you can keep 10% of that and do the second batch all coffee with 10% of what you've got left, and then for the third batch, and that's the one that I started drinking because that started tasting really good, then that one just goes into your litre of coffee with 50 grams of sugar, and you don't need to add any starter tea to that. So every time you're making a new batch of coffee kombucha, you just start again, and you don't need to keep back. But I'm going to do another YouTube video just on how to make coffee kombucha. This is really just to say to you how to convert a Scoby from tea to coffee. You can also do it with a black tea Scoby, but again, as I say, to get the best results you want to do it slightly gradually. So if you give that, and remember, as I say, that a coffee Scoby looks totally different, so if you're going to have lumpy bits or whatever on it, it's fine, doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it, they just look different. So if you've got spare Scobies in, it's a great idea to just give it a go.